If so, I'll call the meeting to order. Roll call, please.
Mr. Simons?
Here.
Mr. Boda?
Here.
Mr. Pitsalas?
Here.
Mr. Horn?
Here.
Mr. Blackstock?
Here.
And Mrs. Babel?
Here.
Have
All
everybody
present. Thank you. Debbie, would you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance? All right, moving on to the approval of the agenda. Is there any additions or deletions to the agenda? I have one I would like to, you have it in your packet, it just didn't get printed on the front sheet of the agenda, is Old Business 2, Michigan Pipeline Inspection. You have it in your packet, it just didn't get put on the front. Does anybody else have any additions or deletions to the agenda? If not, a motion would be in order to approve the agenda with that one change.
There are no additions or deletions other than that one change. I'll make a motion we accept the agenda as provided.
I'll support. It's been moved and supported that we approve the agenda with that correction. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next, we have the approval of the minutes of March 4, 2019.
I have one correction for that.
Okay.
On the back, I typed down Debbie Babel's, the President Pro Tem, and I handled the meeting that night, so it should be down below, President Pro Tem, not Debbie.
Okay. Any other corrections or to the minutes? If not, a motion to approve the minutes?
I make a motion, we approve the minutes with the change.
I support.
We have a motion, we have a second to approve the minutes. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Moving on to public comment. Is there anybody in the audience that would like to talk about anything that's not on the agenda? Seeing none, we'll move on to the consent agenda. We have C1, the February 2019 Park Commission minutes. We have C2 is the February 2019 Building Department report. C3 is the Marine City Fire Authority February 2019 report. C4 is the February 2019 CAS summary by fund. C5 is the February 2019 cash summary by bank. C6 is the February 2019 balance summary report. And C7 is the February 2019 revenue and expenditure report.
Make a motion to accept the consent agenda.
Support.
It's been moved and supported that we accept the consent agenda as presented. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Moving on to disbursements. We have invoices of $108,197.28. We have accounts payable of $463,290.18. We have a payroll direct deposit of $26,522.01. We have EFT payments of $10,509.19. And we have tax checks of $273,345.27 for a total disbursement of $881,863.93.
I'll make a motion we pay the bills in the amount of $881,863.93.
I'll support.
Okay, we have a motion and support to pay the bills. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Mr. Simons,
Yes.
Mr. Horn,
Yes.
Mr. Batsalas,
Yes.
Mr. Boda,
Yes.
Mrs. Bevel,
Yes.
Mr. Blackstock,
Yes.
and Freehand votes yes.
Motion carries, we pay the bills. Moving on to new business, we have the Metro Act Right of Way Permit Extension. It's in your packet. This is something we do, looks like every 5 years.
3 years.
You have a copy of the original contract. This provides for right-of-way for all AT&T services within the township. It's required to be renewed every 5 years. They sent us a letter saying they apologize for being late because it actually expires in January. So, but I understand they've been late every time before. So you have the original contract. It was signed by Mr. Randolph. And this extends it for another 5 years through January of 2024.
Nothing has changed from the previous?
Nothing has changed, no.
I'll make a motion that we accept from AT&T the Metro Act right-of-way permit extension.
Support.
Mr. Batsalas, could your motion be to authorize Mr. Mr. Simons to sign the contract?
Yes, yes.
Support.
All right, it's been moved and supported that we allow the supervisor to sign this Metro Right of Way Permit Extension. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Next, under new business, item 2, water sewer rate adoption. I think that's what everybody's here for. Well, most of this side is. You have it in your packet, we've had a workshop on this, we've talked about it. This is what the rates, it's a 5-year, build-in, I guess you call it, is that what you, phase-in? Is that what we were gonna do, the 3-year? Yeah, we're gonna do, it's up to 5 years, but the committee has recommended we do a 3-year.
3 year.
And I believe, according to our office, we would like to probably do it in October to start it. I believe that's what they conveyed to me, that they'd like to start it in October.
I just have a couple questions that,
Yeah.
I don't know if we have an answer to them, but in the first year, how much money do you think would be generated from that to go into this access management that we're doing?
I have nothing prepared to speak about the rates
Okay.
today. I was here to discuss the water quality report.
Oh, okay. Do you know by chance, Cindy, how much money that's gonna generate for us?
I didn't bring any of that with me. I've got,
That was all provided in the informational
Yeah, in
packet.
that packet we had.
No, I asked that question at the time we had the course, and we didn't know at that time what it was. Because I asked that night we met, what it would generate. And I was just curious how much money that would generate for us. That's all right.
Well, I think it'll be 9.82% of what, increase of what the original revenue was. Okay.
I know I wasn't presented with the packet. I missed both of those meetings, so This is all new to me.
What was your other question you had, Andrew? So you had a couple.
I guess what it could be is just a comment, because the access management, and we went over that, Larry, when we had it in our township manager book, when we looked at the access management that was in there. All we had to do at that time was submit a plan. We didn't have to submit a fund for that account on how we're gonna do it. And I think what happened is, and I may be wrong, Cindy, you can let me know, but I think what has happened with the issue we had in Flint, the government wants to put responsibility on the townships, that they're able to take care of their problems. If there is a damage to the sewer or the water quality, that you have the funds to cover that, so the government doesn't bail you out. Am I correct partially in that, or no?
Not quite sure if I'm understanding that. What I do know is that you were required to submit a plan.
Right.
At the time, you didn't have to have the rate structure in, but the requirement was that the plan was submitted.
Right.
You would have to follow that up with a rate structure that would support the plan.
Okay. But we have not submitted that rate structure yet. That's what we're doing
That's
today?
what we would be doing,
That's what
correct.
we're doing today. Okay.
This is not the asset management. This is strictly providing rate increase that would make the systems, both systems self-sustaining, essentially self-sustaining. The actual asset management for replacement of the pipes and the infrastructure, that's
It's not in here.
something totally different.
So this is not part of the asset management then?
No.
Well, no, it's part of the asset
It's-
management.
it's-
It just brings us up to even.
You've been running in a deficit for years.
Right.
So now, what these rates do is establish a balance where your rates support everything you have that go into creating water and maintaining what you have. We're working now putting a bid package together to put out, to have a capital improvement plan done, an extensive plan for all of your assets in the water and sewer infrastructure. I would guess it would take a year or so, and at that point, you need to look at your rates again and see how long it would take to do those improvements and maintain your assets
Okay.
and have the rates that support that structure.
Okay, so once we submit this structure in, after a year or two, can we revise that?
Always. Yeah.
We can revise it.
That was the intent. This is put in place with the intention to review annually and make adjustments as needed.
Okay, okay. That answers a lot of my questions then, okay.
I do know we got a millage coming off of the water plant next year, which I think is 3/4 of a mil. And I was just wondering if we could use some of that money to help this plan.
You can't use that money.
That's what I asked. I just wondered if we could.
No, you can't. That's bonded money. That was
Well-
voted by the people for the water plant.
Well, but when they had the sewer plant, when that bond was paid off, they reallocated them funds. They didn't give it back to the residents.
Well, I'm not saying we can't add the 7.75 of a mil onto, keep us under the 5 mils and use that. I mean, it would be an increase at that time, is what you're saying. I mean, we would have to do the paperwork to do that. We just can't we just can't say, now take that money and use it for asset
No, I
management.
know that's a bonded issue.
Right, when that's done, that's done. But we're saying that would really take 3/4 of a mil off of our taxes. But if this board decides that we want to add 3/4 of a mil for asset management or whatever, or a 1/2 mil, then we can do that at that time, and it's,
That's the question that you just answered my question.
okay, good. But everybody is under the assumption that when that goes off, we can just keep collecting that 3/4 of a mil, and you can't do that. That bond was voted.
That way the rates won't go up as steep, because these are terrible.
So,
Dwayne,
but again,
how many
this is,
residents do you think actually know that the water bill is actually, what kind of fund they call that? That's,
Enterprise fund?
Enterprise fund.
Enterprise fund. Enterprise?
yeah, that's it. Thank you. Enterprise fund, where you and the wastewater plant can't make a profit.
I would have no idea how many residents are aware of that. You
But
could
you're
do-
making the
board
residents
could do
aware
a
of it right
survey,
now
I
by
think,
telling
right?
them that
Well,
it is an
yeah, but-
enterprise fund.
You know,
Can
being
be.
an enterprise fund, they can't make, you guys can't make a profit.
No.
But the
But
problem,
you can have funds to offset projected costs.
did you say, at this point, we're losing money?
Yes.
So we're not making a profit. This is
No, I'm
targeted.
just saying they can't increase it to a point where it's much more than they get a profit figure. They can't do that.
Yeah,
But
this
what-
is just to cover the cost of making water. This
And
doesn't
sewer.
cover any,
Right.
any improvements, any repairs. This is just to try and get us out of the red. We lose, every gallon of water we make, we lose money right now. So these rates, the first year and second year, they're not even going to, that's still not going to get us where we need to be. We implemented it over a 3-year period to ease that shock. And even at the third year, we're not going, I'm not sure if that's still going to do it.
But that's why, like we're telling Angela, we're gonna review this annually, has to be reviewed, so.
Well, I just think there's other ways of getting funds to subsidize our water and to subsidize everything else, but if we're gonna review it annually, I think we can discuss that at that time. But I think there's other ways of going about, 12% increase a year, comes out to about 40% increase over the 3 years,
Yeah, and
which is, and I know it's covering our costs, I know that.
as we look at the rates each year, your input on how to do things better is always welcome.
And that's why I just wanted to make sure that we could revise it at that time, that we're not stuck with what we have.
Absolutely not. It's
Because
a
there are some
living
things that I'm
document.
thinking about that might work to help subsidize and take that burden off our residents, but.
Another initiative or another motive behind the state of Michigan asking us to do this is to kind of get out of the mindset of set it and forget it. So you set your rates 5 years ago, nobody really thought about it.
Right.
They want you to look at your rates every year and see how the funds are doing.
Right.
And we haven't had an increase since 15.
Correct.
It's been 3 years now, hasn't it? This is going on the 4th year. It's
Yeah,
3 years that
4th
we have
year,
not, because I know we talked about a quarter every year, we never did that. We never did the quarter every year.
But with this asset management program, from the way we were doing it, and Jim can attest to this, we would go and use Stuart Mulvey and Whipple, and we would give them the numbers, and they just crunched the numbers we had. That really, they weren't getting all our assets, they weren't getting what it costs to do a lot of the stuff in the water and sewer departments. So
Right.
with this is a lot more accurate report. I mean, they're willing to look at it if we want them to look at it, but they're just looking at the numbers that we're gonna give them. And I think the committee did a good job they did a lot of work on this.
Right.
I mean, I'm not happy with it. I mean, by no means do I think I don't think there's anybody in this room that wants to raise the rates, but I think it's our due diligence to do it.
What is actually being proposed? We've got a sheet that has 5 years on it.
So the 5-year just shows you the 2 extra years of cost of living.
Okay.
And I think there was a
3%.
Yes, there's not, it's the first 3 years that are the hit, the last 2 years are not much at
Might
all.
add a 5-year
cost of living.
Right.
proposal on here.
But what,
I didn't put that together, so I wasn't able to review it.
It's at the board's pleasure. This is the information, the committee's recommended the 3-year plan. You can move to have that with the stipulation it's reviewed annually and implemented in October, implemented at the first of the year, whatever the board chooses.
Does anybody else have any questions on it? Or?
Just do you have an idea of, is October, as Larry said, is that the prime time for the office staff?
I believe
I
that's.
know there were a lot of complications with the billing.
Well, I think that's the next full quarterly billing cycle, and that would kickstart every subsequent, that everyone would be caught up after that third quarter.
You talked to Irene too, didn't you? She thought October.
October or January. It was really up to the board. I would like you to know that we'll do a public education outreach for the residents of East China, so that when the bill does come, they're not shocked.
Well, it's not gonna be too bad the first.
Larry, I think when we done the ready to serve, we lowered the rates. We should have left them alone.
Yeah.
are right back where we. where
We
were
did that
before.
ready to serve, what, 3 years ago? We did that in 15.
That was the last time we raised the rates.
Yeah.
We lowered them that year.
Yeah, well, maybe only a nickel or something, I can't remember what it was. But we folded in the ready to serve, the $20. But now we're asking to raise the ready to serve and the price per thousand. Debbie, you have anything to,
I'm just listening.
just listening?
A lot of questions have been answered too, so.
Yeah. And we have quite a few of the board member, or the committee members, and Jim Light was on it, and Dwayne. You weren't on it, were you? Blaine was on it? Bob
I
was
was
on
on
it?
Versus on it.
I attended quite a few of them. And we had the workshop for the board, or the, I don't know. It's up to the board. But like I say, if we do this, we're still gonna review it every year. That could be in the motion to review it annually.
I do
And if
see
it's
the
not
need for
going right,
reviewing
either raise it or
annually.
lower it. But in that time, then you're gonna have the asset management for capital projects. Will probably be done within a year.
I would hope so.
So, what do you feel there, Mr. Boda?
I'm not happy with it, but something has to be done, but I'm no fan of it.
No, I'm not neither.
And I don't think anybody is. And we're raising our own rates, but, I mean, I'll make the motion that we adopt the rate schedule as presented to be effective October with the desire to review this every year going forward and reevaluate definitely at the end of the 3 years.
Do you want the 3-year rate structure or the 5-year?
Just the 3 year at this point, I think.
I support.
Okay, we have a motion, we have support to adopt the rate structure presented by the committee for 3 years, and will be reviewed annually. Was that in the motion?
Mhm.
Okay, is there any further discussion? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Mrs. Babel?
Yes.
Mr. Blackstock?
Yes.
Freehand votes yes. Mr. Simons?
Yes?
Mr. Boda?
Yes,
Mr. Vatsalus?
Yes.
Mr. Horn?
I don't want to, but I guess I'm gonna have to vote yes.
Okay, motion carries. That was a hard decision for the board to make, to raise these rates. It's, none of us want to do it, but we have to. Okay, moving on to Park Commission Fund 208, item 3 under new business. This has to do with how we're funding the parks and the rec department? Or is this just park? This is different, Cindy, from how we're doing it, this,
Right, so currently you have a general fund, 101751, that you call Parks and Recreation Department. And currently, that is basically the Parks Commission's budget, which is inserted into the township budget. The proper way, according to the statute, is to create a separate fund, and that's Fund 208. That's for parks maintenance, acquisition, maintenance, and any fees and costs associated with that would remain in that fund. Doesn't really change anything as far as how the board works with the Parks Commission, because you will still allocate a certain amount of the general fund for parks maintenance, but it'll be their discretion as to how to spend that and how to kind of allocate year by year, as it's a fund that can carry over.
So in other words, the park will ask this board for a budget number.
Well, the Parks Commission is going to be required to hold a public hearing for their adoption of their budget, and then they will present that to you for your approval.
And then that money is gonna go into this line 208,
Correct,
and then they can use this money at their discretion.
correct.
And if there's money left at the end of the year, it stays right in that fund for you, the Park Commission, to use. It doesn't come back into the general fund at the end of the calendar year, or
Correct.
physical year.
Correct.
That's totally different than the way we're doing it now. At the end of the year, what's not spent goes back into the general fund.
It always was in the general fund.
Well, yeah, I mean,
Yeah, so that's the difference, that this fund, and the statute supports this means for the Parks Commission to carry out their work.
and if the park were to need more money, they would have to submit something for capital projects prior to, so we can work with it in our budget for the township board if it's a large expenditure.
That would be done ahead of time when we submit our budget. We would submit a request for some capital project
In the future.
in the future. And then you would make the decision on whether you think that project is going to be funded or not.
Or maybe if it was a $30,000 project, we could give you 10,000 each year, and then you guys could set that aside in your budget.
I guess it could work that way.
Right.
It's up to the township board annually to decide how much they want to allocate. If something comes up in between the budget year, some extenuating circumstance that they need extra funding, they would approach you and ask for more funding. That would be up to the board to prove that point. But correct, the funds stay in that 208 account, and they can accumulate.
I think another thing that will stay in that 208 account, correct me if I'm wrong, is the St. Clair County share money, the recreation money that comes to us. Like last year, we didn't spend $5,000 of that money, so that's money that's supposed to be able to be carried over into like this year's budget and put it towards something.
Again-
So that money will be in that fund and it won't be, it'll just roll over automatically with the rest of the.
I believe that the township board allocates that funding to the Parks Commission. Is that correct?
We've given it all to them before.
Correct.
yes.
So, but that's under your authority to do so. So if you want to continue to give them 100%, then that goes in that fund and it stays there, then, just as if it were any other fund.
You're speaking about the money we get from the county though, right?
Correct.
Yeah, that's the 16,000, is that
Right.
right?
Right, that doesn't come through our board. That goes to the park
No,
commission.
but we have to apply for it. We apply to the county
Right.
for it.
Correct.
The county millage is allocated to the townships, and you are the township board, so the money comes to you. Eventually, it filters through to the Park Commission, but that official action comes from the township board to allocate the funding there. You could keep some of it in your Parks and Recreation fund, the 101.751, if you so choose, and give them a percentage of it. That's going to be completely up to the board.
And
Because
do you
what we'll
use
talk
some of
about
that money
next
for
will
the
kind of
Rec department
influence
now?
that.
The rec department?
Park, I mean.
Don't use any of that 16,000 or 17,000?
Cindy, these park facility fees, $8,000 you got down here in your, that to help with the maintenance?
This, what is here
Not
is
going
their,
very far.
this is their current budget. They have it in the general fund right now. It's just being suggested that it be completely moved into a 208 fund.
Because that's, we might have to raise the fees on the use of the park.
Well, that's
To help.
something that the Parks Commission has to do at their budgeting level.
That was one of the questions, Don, that we brought up at the park meeting last Wednesday, was if the fees, the revenues from the pavilions and soccer and the leagues has never come into our budget. We've always been given a budget, but those fees, were in the general fund, and they were helping fund the parks, I'm assuming, but they were never showed up in our budget as a revenue.
I believe they should go right to the park commission.
Right.
That's how it's gonna
And
be.
Well,
That's what this will create. That'll create that formal channel for revenue stream from your pavilion and field rentals. That would become part of the 208 fund, as well as any general fund money the township allocates, as well as any of the county recreation millage that the township
Because
allocates.
the maintenance of the park is very expensive.
Then the other thing with all that, the fees, I know it's not a large number, but that'll show when you present your budget to us. So, I mean, that'll probably make the allocation minus that amount.
correct. And I'm not sure what that 8,000 included. I'm not sure if that included the soccer fees or the league fees. I'm really, Corinne must have given you that figure or given.
This is part of our budget that was just
Yeah, that we adopted.
Okay.
Yep, these three line items are what are considered park and recreation department revenue currently.
We have two columns here. I don't know if you've got a
No,
copy of it.
I don't have a copy. None
Yeah,
of us have.
and that's what that is down, the left column is the revenues, and the right column is the expenditures. I don't know, how do you feel about it? I think it's a better way of
The
keeping
208 fund,
the 208.
I think it's a good idea.
I think that way we won't have this problem that we had at the end of this past year with that culvert, where we were running around trying to get the contractor to do the work and make the payments, and
So that money would have stayed in there and we wouldn't have had to, because we didn't.
we had to do an amendment, I think, didn't we?
I think we did,
Yeah,
because we
so-
didn't end up paying him, but that was because we felt the work needed to be completed. It was kind of a different issue than usually,
Right,
we're facing. And that couldn't be done till spring, that really was, it was just something that had to wait.
right. Because of the weather conditions,
Correct.
yeah.
The 208 fund, that money or that line item stays with, it's part of the township budget.
Correct. It
So
shows up,
we have some review process for it,
correct.
but the actual implementation or management of it, expenditure, approval of expenditures as well as revenues, that's under the purview of the Parks Commission.
Right.
Okay. But we still see that. It's not a fund separate.
No, correct. You'll see that as a 208
Right.
fund in your general budget.
That's all I was just
Yep.
trying to clarify. That-
Sure will. Mhm.
So we have access to it.
You have access and you do still have authority. At the time of your budget approval, you can tell them, yes or no, or we'll approve it with this amount, but not that amount.
I think something else that you brought up, the culvert, that was a capital project that was
Right.
asked for ahead of time. That was not actually like part of,
Yeah, you're right, it wasn't in your regular budget, yeah.
Cindy,
and. I'm sorry, Herb.
was this something with this statute, when these elected officials were put in place, did we have a 208 and it just went by the wayside?
I
Or is
can't
this
find
something
any
totally new?
evidence.
Okay.
I don't think we ever did.
It
Not
appears
I
that
know
there
of.
was Parks and
Okay.
Recreation, that's how it was always coined and discussed. So it always stayed under the general, but really by
Okay.
statute.
I know at one point we were given an allotment every year, and we were saving that, so it was going into account somewhere.
Right,
then it all
and typically
disappeared.
that's done if you are a Parks and Recreation Board, which is appointed, but as an elected commission, they have complete autonomy over their fund.
So you need our action is to approve, just simply establishing the Fund 208?
Right, and we'll take it from there.
The action would be to establish the 208 fund
Okay.
line.
I mean, I don't see a downside to it, so I'll make a motion that we approve the establishment of a Fund 208 for parks maintenance.
Support.
Okay, we have a motion, we have a support for the Park Commission Fund 208. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Ms. Babel?
Yes.
Mr. Blackstock?
Yes.
Freehand votes yes. Mr. Simons?
Yes,
Mr. Boda?
Yes.
Mr. Patsalos?
Yes.
Mr. Horn?
Yes.
motion carries. We have a 208 fund now. Moving on to new business, item 4, Recreation Board. Um, It's been in your packet. I hope you've had a chance to review it. I think what we're saying here is that the Parks is a commission and it's not the recreation. The Park Commission was elected as park commissioners. I think it's evolved, how I'm seeing it from the time I've been here. We have a lot more history here than me. I think the recreation department has gotten bigger and bigger and bigger, and you guys have just run it.
Can I go to the podium
Sure,
for just a minute?
sure.
Maybe some of the background might help. The only thing, my name's Cindy Boda, I'm the chair of the Park Commission. The only thing that we run recreation-wise is the summer recreation program. And that program in East China has been in effect since 1957. And Cindy can't find any evidence, she became concerned, about it. She can't find any evidence that it was ever given over to the Park Commission. I've spoken with George Wagner, who was the first director of that program for 30 years. Someone on the Park Commission hired him. It didn't go before a board. There were no interview type of things. After 30 years, George decided he didn't want to do it anymore, and he said, Susie Cook would be good. So they hired Susie Cook for 2 years. And then Susie didn't want to do it anymore, and somebody on the Park Commission said, Karen Bernardi was the next one, I believe, and she would be good at it. But as far as there being anything in writing that the Park Commission was actually in charge of the summer recreation program or in writing, it's never really been established, apparently. And when I came on the board in 2008, there was a summer recreation director that was not reporting back to the board, and we became concerned about it as a board. And we wrote her a letter, we asked her to come to the meetings, and she finally did come to a meeting. There wasn't a lot of programming, there wasn't a lot of interaction, and we felt as a board that we needed to change that. So we wrote her a letter and basically fired her. And we ran an ad, and we did interviews several, like Saturdays or evenings, and we had maybe 6 candidates, and we had another meeting and decided on a director. That gal stayed for a year, and then we hired Jennifer Arnold. And Jen is our current, I say ours, but the summer recreation director. This will be, I believe, her 5th year as being that director. And she wanted to be here tonight, but there's a lot of school sport meetings tonight. Her daughter had a soccer meeting, Sarah Blackstock's has a baseball, there's a lot of stuff going on tonight. So some of the park board couldn't be here, although everyone's interested, and you know how it's all gonna play out. So anyway, we hired Jennifer. Jennifer's been doing a wonderful job, but we have been giving her direction. So that's how the summer recreation program came about, and nobody really knows why it came about under the Park Commission.
I mean, back when I got on the board, I think it was just something over at the Pine River School. We rented the Pine River School,
And that was the director that we were
and we had a
concerned
bus,
about.
we sent a bus around to pick up students.
Yeah. At one point, the summer rec program owned a bus. And a lot of this is history, and a lot of it is in the books that Agnes Griefor wrote, but where her information came from, we don't, she was pretty careful about what she wrote, but there's no documentation.
But the part you're talking about is a 6-week program in the summer? is
It's a
that
6-week program in the summertime. It's always been a free program to East China residents, and we charge for anyone who's not in East China. Jennifer's had over 100 kids in this program a few years ago. We've limited it now because it's just it got too big. So we give East China residents the first week a chance to sign up, and then we open it up to anyone else. She does field trips, so they get on a bus. We run a bus from East China, and last year they went to the DNR building in Detroit. They go to Sky Zone. There's, say, 5 trips, and then she does a party on the last day of summer recreation. And we have directed this program, evidently, without direction to do so. But it was just something that evolved. And we just did what had been done in the past. So, I don't know if anybody has any other questions about
So the
how
only
it came to
recreation
be.
that we have is the 6-week,
Summer recreation program.
that's the only summer recreation we have.
Right. Jennifer, a couple of years ago, did a few paint parties where several people sign up and someone comes in and teaches like a paint class. So that's the only other thing that's gone on as far as recreation in the past.
I can remember them taking the bus down to the Tiger game a couple of times.
When East China Rec, as far as trips, they went to the zoo, they went to the Tiger games. I believe at some points they went to Greenfield Village. At the time that we hired the new director, the board was concerned about, they said people didn't want their kids to go to Detroit, and they didn't want their kids to go here and go there. So we've done the movies, Sky Zone is in Troy. They go to Sawmill City. Where else? There's 5 trips. Last year it was the DNR. They've gone to the Y. There's been a trip to the Y, different years. She kind of tries to change it up a little bit. So just the background of where it came from, how it got there, where we're at. So,
Okay,
okay, anybody
thank
have
you.
any questions? Okay.
Yeah. So I guess in 1956, it was a park commission, it was not a recreation?
Correct.
Yeah. And what are our options here? Our options are to make a board?
Right, so if I can kind of tell what piqued my interest, and that's our liability when it comes to recreational programming and having children and field trips. So we started doing some investigation just to see exactly who has the authority to conduct recreational programming. And the Public Act clearly states that the Township Board is the authority for recreation programming. They can delegate that to an appointed recreation board, or they can hold that themselves, or they could transfer that to the Parks Commission. But again, keeping in mind, the only thing that they can delegate is an advisory capacity. Still, the Township Board is responsible for decision-making, hiring, all types of financial transactions, setting wages, fees, things like that when it comes to recreation programming. So regardless of who you appoint or delegate to, that body is just an advisory capacity only. So the things that she was discussing, where the Parks Commission secured buses and made agreements and hold harmless agreements, were all in the name of the township, but being managed by the Parks Commission, so that was concerning.
Have you talked to our insurance company, Burnham and Flowers, by any chance? Because I believe it is covered under our insurance.
Correct, but they don't have the authority that they've been taking on, and we've discussed this at length. unless the township board wants to fully delegate the authority to them. But they're still not able to conduct themselves in any other capacity than advisory to the board. So they would come to the board and say, we would like to hire someone. The board has to then approve that. They would come to the board and say, we would like to have a summer rec program, then the board would approve that.
Or in the meantime, they've just hired different, not park managers, but recreation director, like Jen.
Correct.
And in your statute, the state statute says that they don't have power to hire.
Only the township board. The
Only the
township board is
township
the, is the
You know,
agent.
they got here, a recreation board, per your letter. A recreation board is purely advisory committee and wouldn't have any authority, financial or otherwise. The recreation board would be appointed by and serve the township board of trustees and as advisory body for recreational activities occurring within East China Township and operate programs deemed to serve the recreation needs of the community. We could appoint a board, but it has no authority. It's just sitting there.
Well, they're advisory. So keep in mind, this is all from a legal standpoint and what the statutory rights and responsibilities are of the Township Board and of the Parks Commission. And that's where you have to start. So I did discuss it with our attorney, and you have the three choices. You can retain the complete authority and not have an advisory board. You can appoint an advisory board, or you can delegate that to the Parks Commission. And again, they're still only in advisory capacity. Some of the activities that they've been undertaking is why we moved things into a 208 fund, because that 208 fund is only for parks maintenance. And the recreation department budget still stands, and there is money in there, and that would be what would be under the township's control for the summer programming or any other type of recreation programming. And administration of that, which is kind of the other aspect of it, is that the township is administering programs, and they need to have really the oversight of those programs.
Pam, did you have something?
Just clarifies a little bit here, I downloaded, the Township's Parks and Places of Recreation Act 157 of 1905. And 41.426A, it says, the Township Board may authorize the Township Park Commission to act as Township Recreation Board, provided by Act 156 of the Public Acts of 1917, being sections 123.51 to 123.54 of the Michigan Compiled Laws.
Yeah, that's one of our options.
Correct.
So that basically just says that we don't need, we could act as that.
The advisory board.
Park Commission, if you want.
Correct,
But
correct.
Cindy's saying that's still the advisory board.
Yeah.
Correct.
That-
The other thing is that the summer recreation programs employees come out of the line item on our budget that is wages.
That's where you'll have to come to this, if we correct me, if we delegated that to you, you'd have to come to us.
No, that will not be a part of their budget, it's the township budget. The only thing that's going to be reflected in their budget is the
Parks.
208 fund. Correct. They could advise you how to spend your recreation
That's, I mean,
department
they could come and
funding.
advise us that they needed to do this, because we don't want them to take the money out of the 208.
They can't legally, that's the whole point. We have
But
to,
right now, they've been doing that.
there has not been a 208
Right.
fund. Right.
No, I know it
Yep.
before.
Yep, so the Recreation Department, 101-751 will exist. Right now, it has two line items, and that is Summer Recreation Program and Township Picnic.
Yes.
My name is Ms. Ron, and I'm also part of the Parks Commission Board. Previously, I was the chairperson of the Beautification Committee, and as Larry knows, we had a hard time. We had to finally dismantle that because we had a hard time recruiting members, like volunteer members even though, yes, we get paid monthly, I guess it wasn't enough. Even just get recruiting members to join and to attend the meetings. So my only concern with the recreation, a separate recreation board, is that Cindy did mention that we would either try to attract local people to be on the board or parents of the kids. But I'm thinking with my background as a beautification chairperson that we had hard enough time doing that. I don't know how feasible this would be for having a whole board
hard to get volunteers.
Exactly, yeah. And I
No.
feel like advisory board is only going to be, they're not going to get paid even the minimum wage, what they get paid per month, even for that committee or this committee. So I feel like having a separate board might be just a little bit tough.
I see it as, if we give it to the park, but retain it at the park, then the park committee is gonna have to come either to Cindy or to our board to get their funding for that. You don't wanna take your money out of that 208. You can't do that.
We can't.
So you'll be an advisory to this board, and we'll okay that you can hire Jen and spend 4,500 hours on the.
No,
I
Rec-
don't think we can
No.
actually do hire.
No?
No, they would advise that a summer program is a good idea, that they have a director that they would like to retain, and that the township would then carry that out. It's just the administrative part.
So then the township board would do, like, the interviews that we did, and we did I had a couple sheets of questions. So then the township board would do those interviews if the director were to, say Jen quit, got a different job. Then if you wanted to hire someone new, you would have to conduct an interview and decide who would be that person.
If that's the formal process for hiring.
Well, that was how we felt we should conduct that.
So that would be your advice to the township board, that you conduct the interviews and bring the candidate to the board for approval. I mean, that's completely feasible too.
And then they would conduct the interviews.
That would be up to
If
the
we
board.
delegated that.
Yeah,
That would be up to the township board.
From a functional standpoint, Cindy, are all of those things operational for the commission? I mean, logistically, can you do all of those things? Can you, in effect, interview people,
They're doing it now.
search for it?
They do everything now.
Yeah, I understand you're doing that, but you don't see that as a problem, because what you're doing is, there's another layer of activity. You would
Correct.
then make a recommendation to this board. Okay, so it's just
We did it,
some.
but, you know, it was 4 or 5 years ago. We have a very active board. We have a board that feels strongly about recreation and the parks. It's really your decision to make. This is kind of a fact-finding, information.
Well, that was my question, was, let's say that you had to hire somebody next year. The commission is in a position, time-wise and structurally, to be able to go through that process and make a recommendation.
I feel that we probably are, yes.
Okay.
I still have the questions, I still have, we only did what we felt we were supposed to do. Nobody had ever questioned what was going on. Jennifer actually hires her own people, as does Deanna in the park. Deanna runs an ad, Jennifer knows enough, of the kids that,
Well, I think that's where Cindy's coming from. The statutes say that you can't hire this
Can't
person.
hire.
I think this board would let you do the hiring. I don't think we have,
Right,
but we
and
ought to
I-
make sure the statutes are satisfied, right?
I understand that. So is Jennifer gonna be able to, or are those people gonna have to come to the township board to be hired? Jennifer's staff?
That would be up to the township board.
Yeah, that's what
I
was
think this
looking at
thing's getting
from a
way more
logistical
complicated than it really has to
I
be.
think so, too.
I think if you come to us quarterly and say, we have a summer rec program, we're gonna hire 9 people, we're gonna make 5 field trips, that's what we'd like to do. And as a board, we can say, go ahead and do it.
Well, you would say
You'd
to
have
me,
to-
go ahead and do it.
Yeah, we'd
I
say
would-
to you, go ahead and do
I
it
would
and go.
administer
And then
the
the next quarter, you can
programming.
come to us in the wintertime and say, we need 4 people to do this, or 5 people to do, and then we just give you an approval for the whole quarter, for the whole half year. We don't have to come together every meeting and
No,
discuss things.
no.
So, I think we're making it more complicated than what it really actually is. As long as we follow the guidelines and we stay within the parameter, I don't see why the Park Commission can't continue doing what they're doing, and we give them the authority to do that.
I think we should
But
leave
the
well
authority
enough
will come
alone.
from Cindy.
Right, the
as far
authority will
as the
come from
statute.
city, I understand that, but I don't think they have to come to us, I'm gonna hire this person today, come to us next week, we wanna hire this person. If we give them the authority to go ahead and hire their summer recreation people through Cindy, they have their okay.
Does that work, Cindy?
Essentially. It does. And I really, if you read the resolution to create or appoint a board, recommend that they meet at least quarterly. And that could be all that's required is 4 times a year, summer, fall, winter, spring. And they bring their recommendation to the board of what upcoming programming should be approved, and then they work through me to administer that.
So would
because
it satisfy the statute if you met with them as part of the advisory board?
There is no statute for the recreation board.
Okay,
You create it or you don't.
just for the
It's up to you.
park.
Yeah,
Right,
or
the
Cindy
issue
could
at
just come
hand is
to us
that the
quarterly.
Parks
Yeah.
Commission can't hire, and they can't run recreation programming. Only the township can do that,
Well, the park commission can hire to maintain
right?
the
Like,
parks.
correct,
like
but they
your
can't
job.
do the recreation programming. So all of this separate is parks maintenance with Deanna and her staff, that we're not even talking about. It's just the recreation programming.
But if we give them the authority to hire the recreation people through you, can they still do it that way? To hire the recreation personnel?
I don't know that you can pass the authority to hire, you can give them the advisory role to recommend.
And then we'll
Right,
have Cindy do the hiring.
Right.
Or with them, or,
right. I mean, she can just come before us before the summer rec and say, we have these 8 people that are gonna be working. We're gonna make these 4 field trips, and we advise the board, or will the board give us permission to do something like that?
And
Correct.
as long as the hiring guidelines are met, I mean, we have some basic guidelines that we would need if we're hiring.
I
people.
would have to be involved in the hiring process
Right.
because they would be directly employed
Yeah.
by the township, whereas the park
with the
commission
HR and all
Yeah.
that.
hires their own.
Yeah, that's,
But the commission has no problem with that.
No, no.
You would make a recommendation, these are the people, and we've done the interviews, and.
Correct.
the interviews-
Essentially, that has been how it's been handled.
Yeah, I know, that's,
So it's
That's
really
been all
just
the
making
time.
it formal.
yeah.
Yeah, we
that's-
want to make it formal, yeah.
she had a question, Larry.
My only question was, I know, I think last summer when someone quit, Jen hired, well, not hired, we had volunteers.
Jennifer did have volunteers.
Yes, so how does that play into the liability issue? And can
We're still
Does she have
covered
the
with
authority?
volunteers.
so we don't have to be worried about,
Right, so this is the kind of thing that would be removed from the responsibility and authority of the Parks Commission.
I see.
Since she would be a township employee reporting to me, then we would work on any issues dealing with personnel.
So she would no longer come to the park commission to give a report.
Well, not the Park Commission, but if you're appointed as the board, Recreation Board.
You'd be
then
the
you would-
recreation board then.
So you would close your Parks Commission meeting, open your Recreation Board meeting, she would report.
That's what Deanna just asked, could we do those both at the same
Yeah.
meeting?
Yes.
So we
Yeah.
would have to.
Close your Parks Commission meeting, correct? And then
do a-
essentially, it's just moving that one, item 8, which has always been summer recreation, and putting it at the bottom, so that it's not the Parks Commission that's discussing it, it's the Parks, or it's the Recreation Board.
so we can't join the 2 names together like the show, Parks and Recreation.
I know it sounds complicated, but we're just trying to follow the statute and make sure, now that we've got that Fund 208 set up, we understand what that can be spent on, and that we have a Recreation Department budget item, and that the Township Board is essentially the authority over that department.
And then as far as the summer recreation program wages, they're a line item, they're with, Deanna's staff and her wage, and, Ed, that mows all the outside parks, he's part of that wage. Summer rec director and staff has always come out of that line item also, so will that line item
Be changed.
be changed?
Correct.
to
Your
accommodate-
Your fund will only be able to pay for parks maintenance wages.
Not the recreation.
Correct. We're just trying.
We
to
will
make-
give you that authority here.
What's that?
This board will give the authority for the rec payment.
No, they won't have anything to do with the budget. They're advisory only, they wouldn't have anything to do
No,
with
I
the
know,
budget.
but this board will have the budget part of it.
Correct,
So when does this take into, like, effect?
depending on what the board decides. It's up to the board.
Could be immediately.
I mean, the board does have to make a decision, one way or the other, whether they retain the authority, whether they create an appointed board, or if they grant that authority to the existing Parks Commission.
So does everybody understand the issues? Everybody's
Pretty much.
done and
How does the park commission feel? I mean, because
Yeah.
I'm not against tabling this matter and either having their board attend our next board meeting, so we're all on the same page, or we hold a workshop where they attend and we attend, just so we're all on the same page and we all know which way we're going for it. But as far as I'm concerned, I think our park we don't need a recreation board. I think our park should be the recreation board. They've always done it. I think they're very capable of it. They do a great job doing it. I just want to make sure we're all on the same page as far as what authority you have and what authority you won't have. And if you feel your park commission is on board with that, then that's fine. If
Leave
not,
it
I
the
think
way
we
it
need to
is.
get together and we all need to be on board. Because I don't know how much our board understands it, so.
I did attend the Parks Commission meeting. We had a couple hours of open discussion. Hopefully it was
A lot
helpful.
of opinions.
how do you feel? Is your park commission willing to continue to do this?
I believe so, yes. How do you-
Yes.
So I think we got a pretty good,
All right, so we wouldn't need to get together
No,
with everybody. Okay.
Leave well enough alone.
Um, I know there were people that wanted to come tonight that had a lot of questions. I think a lot of the questions got answered Wednesday night. If your board feels that, the park commission, I know Chris wasn't at that meeting, Chris Simons, he was out of town, so he didn't have the opportunity to hear any of that. I'm sure the park commission would be fine with meeting with you, if that's how you want to do that. I mean, Cindy answered their questions the other night. It's an emotional thing too, because it's kind of one big, everything that's getting it.
but I think the consensus of this board is that we want to leave it with you. I mean, is that what I'm
That's right.
hearing?
Leave it like it is.
Can I
So it
make-
would be no change other than you have to go,
Well, it's gonna be changed because Jennifer would no longer work for us. She would be working for the township board. That's one change. I mean, we would advise how,
well, but we're going to give you that authority to have her.
No.
No,
no, she
You
won't.
should be working for Cindy,
Right.
Right.
which everybody in essence works for Cindy.
Yeah, but all the employees work for the township. I mean, it's not one or the other. I mean, they're all working.
That's not really true, right?
No, Deanna does not work for me. Nor do her staff.
She works for
It's
part
been
of
totally
maintaining
an
the parks.
eye-opener.
The parks.
All of us.
and anybody in the recreation program would work for the township,
Correct.
so.
And I don't think that would hinder in any way whether she's working for Cindy or working for you, because again, we'll give Cindy the authority to let you do what she's doing right now, what Jen is doing right now, so.
What it'll allow is us to have a really better handle on the day-to-day administrative part of it.
And that's another issue. And I think I'll go to the podium. I know Ken has a hard time when I sit out here and I apologize.
I didn't even know there was a man in there.
There it is. So, the other issue is how the park and how the summer recreation program uses the township staff. So, someone comes in to rent a pavilion, and Sandy Doctor was always at that desk, and she always took care of the summer recreation program. Well, now Wendy's the deputy clerk, she's at that desk. Pamela's handling the building department, and what else? I know their duties have been moved around, so I'm not totally clear on what everybody's. So, all the other departments have a line item in their budget for use of the township and the office staff, the employees. So that's something that's going to have to show up on our budget. And summer rec is a very active enrollment, 6 weeks, 8 weeks. because parents come in and they want to sign up for field trips, and Jennifer sells T-shirts, and there's a lot of stuff going on. And the way we have done it in the past is we've offered to come in on a Saturday or a couple afternoons or an evening, and we were told by the office staff they could handle it. So now, it's different, and it's,
Well,
Do you wanna jump
actually,
in?
this will take that responsibility away from the Parks Commission. So whether or not the work gets done is really not going to be under your concern. We will be getting it done, as it has been, only it's township employees, township budget. You won't have to concern yourself.
but the
because
pavilion rentals would still be, we would still be using the staff for the pavilion
Correct.
rentals.
Yeah, and we will have to talk about how that works, because we also do payroll and HR processing for the Parks Commission. And that's not been considered before, so we'll have to talk about that.
So that'll show up in our budget as to how the office staff, I mean, there's a lot to think about. It's a lot of things that haven't been thought about in the past.
But all of the recreation programming will be under the Recreation Department, which is the township budget.
That won't be a part of your job anymore. It would be to register all those people. That'll be done by
Correct.
township employees.
Well, it's always been done by township employees.
I know, but you've got involved, you've been in here and you've registered people and you've had Saturday registrations and stuff like that. That won't be done like
Right.
that.
Certainly, the Recreation Department welcomes volunteers,
It's had a volunteer
That's
for a
what I
long
mean, it's gonna
time.
take a lot
but
off
it would
of
not
you,
be
right?
required, because it's not a duty of the Parks Commission chair.
So, just so you understand, some of the other workings that we're looking at. And then the pavilion rentals, when would that start coming back to us? Next year, in the budget next year? Would the budget that's here this year stand except for, or would the summer rec program be moved out of that budget now, or how would things
Well,
work for this year?
Your 208 fund now will become your budget. And there's no recreation programming funding in that budget. So again, that's something that the township will manage. As far as assisting with administrating the pavilion and field rentals, we're working through that. I've got a meeting set up tomorrow with my staff. And we're gonna try and figure out how to best accommodate that transition. This year, we'll just be working with the system that's in place and trying to figure out how we're gonna transition that probably for next year. But the idea is to move all the administrative back to the township, unless the Parks Commission wants to administer it, but you don't have the staff to do that. So that's why we're suggesting that we take that role on, and we'll have to look at how that impacts our budget.
Right. So, one of my questions, Sarah, the other night also, like Don Horn said earlier, the $8,000, that was a figure, and I'm not sure what that included, is not enough to run the park. I had questioned you, ahead of time, and Sarah came up with the same question the other night. Is that the soccer fees, because soccer is a huge maintenance over there, do the soccer fees come back to us? Do the park rental fees, and when would that start?
Well, once we set up the 208 fund, then Corinne and I will start looking at if we can try and estimate. I don't know if they've kept those revenues separate so that we can estimate past year's revenue and kind of use that as this year's. But next
Guideline.
year, you will have to budget based on what you did this year.
Okay.
So that number will come into your budget, this rentals will.
Right, but the question was whether that would be enough. That's not gonna be enough
No,
to
no,
run
we
the
know
park.
that's not
So
enough.
there was a line in there for general.
There always will be that option for the township to allocate funding from the general
Right.
fund.
I mean, just so everybody's, knowing what's been discussed and what the plans are gonna be, so.
I'm sure that, and I know it's typical, that the large portion of the parks 208 fund is general fund allocation. But the good part of that is once it's in there, they can take it back.
Right.
They won't be annually reviewing that, taking it back, and then reallocating it.
So does anybody have any other questions for Cindy or myself?
Is registering something that you guys wanted to do? Or is, I mean, is that an issue with your park commission? To have people register for the park, for the summer rec and all that?
It's more convenient for those people as far as work schedules to come to the front counter and do that registering. If Cindy feels that we need to help with that, Jennifer will be her employee, and she can ask her to come in, and she's more than willing to do that.
Yeah.
She's done it in the past. We've done Saturdays, which I was a volunteer and came in and helped with the money, and, then someone's holding that money over the weekend, but it is feasible to do that, and Jennifer is more than willing to
Yeah,
take on that.
That's a good option.
If you want to take some of the burden off the office staff, it's intense for a few weeks.
I know that that's typically done in most rec programs, is you offer an after-hours evening registration and a Saturday registration for families who can't make it
So
there.
that's something that you would have to make
Correct.
a decision on.
And is that something our board, I mean, as far as letting them say, okay, that you can go ahead and hold your Saturday registrations and after hours, something coming from you to them, if they wanted to do that?
That'll be from Cindy to Jennifer.
Cindy to
Right.
Jennifer, okay, yes.
Yep, so the advisory board will tell me, hey, we really need to do some Saturday registrations, and then I would work with our employee, who's Jen, make that happen.
Anything else? Anything that we haven't covered?
You covered everything.
More than you wanted to.
Can I make a motion that we give the Parks Commission the authority to act as an advisory recreation board for recreational programs and staff, effective immediately?
I'll support that.
Okay, we have a motion and we have a support to appoint the Park Commission to act as the advisory recreation board. Does everybody understand the motion? If not, a roll call, please.
Mr. Horn,
Yes.
Mr. Futsalis?
Yes.
Mr. Boda?
Yes.
Mr. Simons?
Yes.
Rehan votes yes. Mr. Blackstock?
Yes.
Mrs. Babel?
Yes.
Motion carries. You are the advisory committee now. All right, moving on to new business item 5, water quality report. Dwayne Loper's here, our supervisor of the water plant. You have the report in your packet.
The report was provided in your packet for informational purposes only. It was at Larry's request that I attend the meeting in case you had any questions.
Overall, the report looks quite well. We've got good clean water and
Yes, we continue
what
to meet or exceed all EPA and MDEQ requirements.
are we getting anything on that monitor that we got in now? Are you getting readings?
Yeah, we're getting full readings. So we receive our pH readings, turbidity, ORP, it's oxygen reduction potential, dissolved oxygen. We get those readings reported continually. Right now, it's very beneficial. We're able to monitor turbidity real time. And with the melt and the runoff, turbidities are rather high. So we're able to kind of get ahead of it in the morning, know how we need to run the plant, so we don't stress our filters.
How are them filters running now? We had a problem when it first started.
Filters run fine. Again, we are beginning phase 2 of the scheduled replacement, so it'll be a 3-phase process to replace all of the filter fibers. Last year went seamless, and those filters are performing very well. We expect to get 10 to 12 years out of each set, and by staggering them periodically, we won't have the big lump sum like you did in 2008. So each year, as you set monies aside into the authority module replacement fund, you'll have enough money each year moving forward to replace the filters as they degrade.
I know when that plant first started, we had a terrible time with the filters.
Yes. So this
Great.
is the first time they've reached their life expectancy.
That's good.
Yes, and a credit to your operators who know how to run them as proficiently as possible.
And the other thing is that Sewer Water Authority is budgeting the money too,
Yes,
setting it aside for when those filters become bad, that they have the money to buy another train.
yeah, so when the boards, each township created that authority, it's a great model for asset management. And like Mr. Boda said, you can never be for profit, but you can bring in enough revenues to stave off future expenditures. And every month, they're putting $8,000 away, $8,000, and that's adding up enough to replace all of your fibers. So those funds will grow, but you know that they will be depleted, and then you build them up, take them down.
And that's what asset managers is modeled after.
Exactly.
Right.
There is
Any
one
other
item that I would like to draw your attention to. At the top, water to customers, the very last line item. I don't know if you caught that, but we did see a significant increase in lost water again. But we are taking measures with the Rural Community, RCAP, Rural Community Assistance Program, to investigate where that water is. So while the water plant continues to produce more water, our billing department is billing for less water. So the gap keeps growing. But we are now actively pursuing, finding what is that cause.
Does that figure up a lot from previous years?
Yes,
It is.
it is.
You're not finding any hydrants being opened, are you?
So Blaine may be able to speak as to what the distribution operators are finding in the field. We are working at the water plant. Each year, we bring in experts to calibrate and verify the calibration of all of our flow meters. And I know the billing department is working on having an account audit. So we're working collaboratively to find out, what the issue is.
I see you treated 8.2% more than you did in 2017, so.
Yes.
You've got fires, the fires at the line, at end of that line item, is that actual billing fires then?
I have not received a report from our fire authority for the amount of fires they fight. That's just an estimation.
When was the Edison fire?
When were the new filters placed?
So we bought 3 sets last year. We'll have 3 more next month. And then we're hoping to get about 16 months and then replace the final set.
There's more than one set of filters, there's multiple filters. We change them in a train type thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, that lost water, that's,
That lost water could have a lot to do with
Oh,
our water rates and our
it
water
eats on our
billing. I mean,
water
it has a lot
rates,
to
yeah.
do with
But
it.
Blaine's been working on it, Dwayne's been working on it, we all been working on it. I mean, we find leaks and we fix the leaks, but it's still going up. I mean, we were wondering if it was in the meters, so we've done a lot with the meters.
So the gentleman from Rural Community Assistance Program did note that, our distribution system is sparse. We have very few customers over a very large area. Noticing that some of our service lines are a few hundred yards long. So you have a lot of area for where water may leak. And they use the analogy that, are you looking for one 500-gallon-a-minute leak or 501 gallon-a-minute leaks? And I would say we're probably chasing the latter. So
Yeah, because we have those
There are-
lines on the river that go from 29 all the way 700 feet back to their houses where the meter's at. And all that line in between is our loss.
Yep, that could be.
I just wanted you to know, if you saw that we are actively pursuing a resolution. And feel free to call myself or Blaine or the office. We'll give you an update.
And that's another thing on the meters, getting all these Badger meters out of there and getting the radio reads, because as meters get old, they read less, not
Yes.
more.
Right.
So,
Thanks, Herb.
Huh?
I just thanked Herb for getting a new meter.
Yeah,
Leave
Not
my
yet.
old one that way. Leave my old one in.
yeah, I know. Yours is coming out.
So if you have no other questions, I appreciate
All
your
right,
time.
thank you,
this evening.
Blaine.
And our water does taste good, Dwayne. It's very good water.
So I guess an action to receive and file that water quality report would be in order?
I'll make that motion.
Make that, Don?
Yes.
Don?
I was gonna say it would take and accept, receive and file the water quality report.
It's Don and Don? Okay.
Done and done.
All right, we have a motion and a second to receive and file. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Moving on to new business 6, resolution commitment to the NPDES, which I believe is the watershed. Everybody knows what the watershed is. It's, I believe it was $800 and some dollars.
We do that every year, don't we, Larry?
Yep.
The watershed?
If you read that chart there, we are the lowest entity in the whole thing, which we have always been. I think it's $835.
$835.99.
$35.99.
So I guess the people that are on that committee, which is Dwayne and I believe Cindy's on that too, but is, at all times when you're at those meetings, make sure they don't make us high.
Keep us at the bottom.
Because that was founded on population, and they've made some changes to it. But I think it's a worthwhile thing. Before, we had Wade Trim doing that, and I think it was like $6,000 a year we were paying them to do it. So now we're getting away for $835 a year, which we have for a number of years. So,
That was a little less than last year's too, so it was $853 last
Is
year.
it?
Yeah, it was $853 it shows.
well, it really makes sense to all those communities to go with one engineering firm and do your SWIPI and all that as a group, rather than everybody trying to do it individually. So I guess a motion to, do we have to read that resolution? What am I looking at? I think we just have to approve the payment.
It's just this one page.
No, this is not a number, this is their this is not one of our numbered resolutions. We just have to approve the pay.
This,
Yeah, we don't have to read that. We need a motion to approve the payment of the cost sharing of the amount of $835.99.
So move.
support.
Okay, we have a motion and a support. Is there any further questions? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Mr. Simons?
Yes.
Mr. Boda?
Yes.
Mr. Blackstock?
Yes.
Mr. Patsalos?
Yes.
Mrs. Bevel?
Yes.
And Mr. Horn?
Yes.
Motion carries. Moving on to old business. 1, recreational marijuana opt-out ordinance. I missed the last meeting where you discussed some of this.
It was lightly discussed and then it was tabled to talk to the,
Well, you got an
Attorney.
opinion here from the attorney now, what we have to do.
she supplied us with a sample opt-out, resolution.
Just by way of information, the current code of ordinances restricts any medical marijuana dispensaries within the township.
The current one?
They are not, they are prohibited
Do
in the
not
township.
allow it.
They're not allowed.
We're not talking about medical.
No,
We're
and-
talking about,
Yes, this, I'm just saying that
Okay.
currently you have,
well, that, I was wondering about that
Yeah.
myself.
that was
Glad you-
adopted by the planning commission and the township board several years
I'm
ago.
glad you told me that. I'm happy to know.
So I guess what our decision is, do we want to opt out or opt in? Or by opting in, you do nothing.
I would make a motion that we, the township take and opt out of the marijuana law.
I'll support.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to opt out, to have our attorney draft an opt-out ordinance, is that what you're asking for?
Right.
Ordinance for consideration and approval with guidance from the board regarding any special allowances. So you just want to opt out of everything? Is that what your motion
I'm
is?
concerned.
You can't, the recreational, we can't do.
We're not talking nothing about recreational, that's all handled, right?
No, medical.
This is
This
recreational.
is your recreational opt-out. That's what
Oh,
you're
I mean,
Yeah.
medical.
Yeah.
Medical is, recreation is what we're opting out of.
You're opting out of facilities, essentially.
correct.
It says right here what they are.
You can't opt out of people using marijuana
Right.
recreationally if it falls within state guidelines.
It's, growers, marijuana establishments, safety
Right.
compliance facilities, marijuana processing,
Processors,
blah, 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 blah.
businesses.
All right, we have a motion, we have a second.
Opt out
Is
on
there any further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
So you'll see at your next meeting then potentially a draft ordinance.
Okay. All right, now, item 2 under old business, Michigan pipe inspection. You have that in the back of your packet there. It's on the back of the, it got stapled to the other one. This was what Blaine submitted to us. This is money that we have budgeted. So we're gonna start doing that now?
I brought you this proposal last fall before this year's budget was created. So I'd like you to look at it now, and this would be our project for this year.
We've already done some of it, haven't we?
We completed last year's project.
Oh, okay.
Earlier this month. We got, first part of
And I think we had 75,000 in the budget for that.
They'll supply you with a film of this also, right, like they did before, so we'll have filmings of everything.
Blaine, I thought they were supposed to do a 300-foot just south of Merrill during the winter. That's what the engineers recommended.
I don't think we did that, though.
We're supposed to line it.
That was last fall, well, you did not do that.
Right. Was that like $90,000 or something to do 30, yeah, that's right.
This is just for the clean camera.
Would this cammering have anything, like, can we find if any water's going through that, does that help the water at all to find leaks or anything, does it?
When you watch the video, you can see if there's any large amounts of water.
Coming in?
That's also been a theory that there's a water main break leaking above a sewer main that could be leaking in.
So it would show up on the film and everything?
Yes.
And some of that is in your neighborhood. If you see the trailer out there, anybody, even residents, if they see the trailer out there doing the camera, you wouldn't think it's interesting, but it is to watch that thing go down. Cindy watched it.
Well, I think it would be interesting. I
Oh,
think that would
You
be,
see everything. Okay, Don, sorry.
Okay, I'll make a motion for East China Township for the sanitary sewer cleaning and video inspection proposal for 219 at an approximate cost of $67,897.08.
Support.
Okay, we have a motion and we have a support to allow Blaine to start doing this cammering, and then we have all the permanent records. Anytime anybody wants to see any of these, you can view them. Blaine can show them to you.
Beginning in 2008, when this project started, I have all the DVDs and videos in the shop.
now, is our goal to do all the sewers in their township? Is that what our goal is?
The guideline is every 10 years, you clean and camera your entire system. We've been at this for 10 years, and we're about halfway through the township. So
We've never done it.
Okay.
Staying on it, but
Wayne, are they still inserting these, for lack of a better term, a sock in the side of a pipe that's got some leaks to try and stop them, or?
That was the lining.
That's the lining.
Yeah, the fiberglass sock, that's installed.
Okay, thank you.
But one of the things that this board and we kind of missed the boat on was the saw grants. We should have got the saw grants, because that's what this does. The saw grants is one of the big things it does is the Camry.
Well, it wasn't that we didn't want to do it, we missed it. Because we said we're going to delay it for a couple
Well, he
months
said
there.
that you could apply for
We
it
could-
next year.
Yes, that's what Brian told us from Wade Trim. You could apply for it next year, and then when we waited that year, we lost it.
So anyways, we have a motion, we have a second to do that. I guess we'll do a roll call vote, please.
Mr. Boda?
Yes.
Mr. Patsalos?
Yes.
Mr. Simons?
Yes?
Mr. Horn?
Yes.
Freehand votes yes. Mrs. Babel?
Yes.
Mr. Blackstock?
Yes.
Motion carries. All right, that completes our regular business. Now we'll go on to announcements. I don't have any announcements at this time. We'll move on to member comments. Mr. Horn.
I don't have anything.
Okay. Mr. Pasal?
Nothing today, Larry, thank you.
Mr. Boda?
Nothing to say, Dean, thank you.
Mr. Freehand?
Nothing.
Mr. Blackstock?
Nothing, thank you.
Ms. Babel?
Nothing.
Well, I got something.
What's a surprise?
Yeah. We need another person on the planning commission, so if anybody wants to volunteer for anything, we still need a few people on some committees. The other thing is, we toured the DTE plant there Friday. They're making progress on there. They're gonna be a little longer driving that piling than was expected. It's probably not gonna be done till probably the end of April, first part of May, so.
So we're still gonna hear that pounding at 8 o'clock every Saturday morning?
I see they erected a tower crane over there today.
Yep, they got that. That'll be taken down after the job's done.
They, I noticed they were also street sweeping the road in front
Yes.
of
Yes.
M29.
Yeah, we had a discussion with them Friday about that, and, the weather wasn't conducive to freezing and thawing, and then,
That's from
but
all
they've
the
got it
truck-
cleaned up now. It looks pretty good down there.
It's from all the trucking,
Huh?
from all the trucking.
Yeah, the trucking and that boring underneath for their water line. They had to run track vehicles down the side of the road there. I think that's where a lot of the mud came from.
Tore up the top of the berm.
What's that?
So they tore up the top of the berm.
Yeah, they had some trouble with that berm. But that's all I have under member comments. One other thing, I will be attending the MTA convention at the next meeting, so I will not be present. So I believe I'm the only one that'll be missing, so you can go ahead and have your meeting. With that, I guess a motion to adjourn is in order.
Make a motion that we adjourn at 9:03.
Support.
Okay, it's been moved and supported that we adjourn at 9:03. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
All right.
Opposed? Motion carries. We are adjourned. Thank you. And thank you guys for showing up here today, too.